I always do my grocery runs late. Less noise, fewer people, easier to think. That night it was close to 11:30 when I rolled into the Stop and Save lot. The air was damp from an earlier drizzle, and the yellow lights over the asphalt buzzed with that soft electrical hum that always makes the night feel thinner, like it's about to rip open. The store was mostly empty. Inside, everything looked washed out. Rows of fluorescent aisles, the faint smell of citrus cleaner, one tired cashier scrolling through her phone. I remember moving slowly through the aisles, picking up what I needed: milk, eggs, a few frozen dinners, cat food. There was this weird hush to the place. Even the music they usually played, the kind of cheap, upbeat radio loop, wasn't on. Just the soft clack of my cart and that hum. When I got to checkout, the cashier startled like she'd been dozing. She didn't even greet me, just scanned my things, eyes darting toward the big front windows. Outside, the parking lot stretched like a sea of concrete. Only a few cars scattered under the lights, most dark except one older sedan parked several spaces down from mine. I noticed it because its headlights were still on, dim, yellow, flickering slightly, like the car was breathing. "Someone left their lights on," I said, trying to sound casual. The cashier didn't look up. She just said, "They've been out there a while." That's when I realized she hadn't meant it like information, more like a warning. I paid, thanked her, and pushed my cart toward the sliding doors. The night air hit colder than I expected. The lot was quieter now, emptier. The hum from the store lights vibrated against the silence. I could hear my own shoes scuffing against the pavement. And then I saw it, the old sedan idling, faint smoke curling from its exhaust. The driver's seat looked empty. I told myself someone probably ran back inside, or maybe the car was warming up. I kept walking, but something about the rhythm of that idling engine, it didn't feel random. It felt like the car was waiting. The air smelled like damp asphalt and exhaust, that heavy metallic scent that clings to your tongue. My car sat near the far light post, directly in line with the old sedan. I pushed my cart faster than usual, the wheels squealing slightly over a crack. Halfway there, I noticed the sedan's interior light was on. You could see the faint glow from the dashboard flickering across the windshield. But still, no one in the front seat. I slowed, suddenly aware of how loud everything I did sounded. The rattle of plastic bags, the thud of my shoes, my breathing. When I stopped moving, the world went completely still. The sedan idled. Its engine stuttered slightly. 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, like a heartbeat out of sync. I felt stupid even thinking it, but it felt like the car was watching me. I told myself to relax. I was overreacting. Small towns get quiet after midnight. Maybe the owner worked night shifts and was napping before the drive home. I turned away, loaded my bags into the trunk, keys in my teeth. My reflection flashed in the car window beside me. Tired eyes, small frown, nothing out of place. When I turned back toward the store, I froze. The sedan's headlights had turned off. Just darkness now. The engine still ran, a low growl under the hum of the parking lot lights. But the light above it, the one that had been steady all night, started to flicker. Once, twice, then out. That's when I realized something else. There wasn't just one shadow in that car. There were two. I pulled my phone from my jacket pocket. No service. Typical. The Stop and Save always had bad reception. I could have gone back inside, asked the cashier to walk me out, but that felt ridiculous. What would I even say? "Hey, there's a car that feels weird." Instead, I climbed into my car, locked the doors, and turned the key. My headlights spilled across the asphalt. The sedan looked ordinary again, paint chipped, wipers bent, the kind of car you'd barely notice in daylight. I sat there for a moment, pretending to check my phone while watching through the corner of my eye. Then the sedan's engine cut off. Silence. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the air fogged the glass. I turned my key again. Nothing. My engine refused to start. Once. Twice. 3 times. Just clicks. That's when I saw movement. The driver's side door of the sedan opened slowly, like someone testing the air. A tall figure stepped out. No umbrella, no jacket, just standing there in the half-dark, head tilted toward me. They didn't move closer. They didn't wave. They just stood, outlined in that pale parking lot light. Something inside me screamed to go. I grabbed my phone again, still no service. I hit record anyway, pointed the camera toward the windshield, zoomed in. The figure hadn't moved. Then my phone buzzed, one new notification. AirDrop. You left your light on. I dropped the phone. It hit the floorboard. When I picked it up again, the screen was black. Outside, the figure was gone. I don't remember deciding to stay. I just couldn't make myself get out of the car. It felt safer inside, like the doors meant something. I sat with the engine off, headlights dimmed, trying to slow my breathing. Minutes passed, maybe 20, maybe more. The store lights clicked off one by one. The cashier must have closed up and gone home. The only lights left were mine and the faint glow from the empty soda machine by the entrance. I told myself it was over. Whoever that was, maybe they'd left. I turned to start the car again. This time it roared to life instantly, almost too loud in the silence. Relief hit me hard enough that I laughed. Then I heard the knock. 3 soft taps on the rear window. I froze, didn't turn around. My breath fogged the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, careful, like someone didn't want to scare me, just remind me they were there. I couldn't see anything in the mirrors, not even shadows, just the faint shimmer of streetlight bouncing off rain puddles. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I shifted into reverse, but I couldn't move. The air felt too heavy. Another tap, then a whisper, right by my ear. You left your light on. I screamed, slammed the car into drive and floored it. The tires squealed against the wet asphalt. As I shot toward the exit, I caught one last look in the rearview mirror. The sedan's headlights were on again, but the driver's seat was still empty. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway home, hands white on the steering wheel, heart still hammering. The roads were empty. Everything behind me felt darker than it should have been. I called 911 once I had signal, told them what happened. The dispatcher sounded calm, too calm, like she'd heard it before. She said she'd send a cruiser to check. I barely slept that night. My cat meowed at the window for hours, staring out into the parking lot below my apartment. Every time headlights passed, my pulse jumped. In the morning, I checked my phone. The video I'd recorded. Just static. No sound, no image, just a faint flicker that looked like a face when I paused it. 2 days later, I drove past the stop and save again. Yellow tape crossed part of the lot. A tow truck was pulling away with a familiar old sedan on the back, windshield cracked, driver's side door wide open. I asked the clerk at the counter what happened. He looked at me strangely, then said, "That car's been sitting there for a week." Belonged to a guy who went missing last Thursday. I told him I'd seen it running. He frowned. "That's impossible. Battery was dead when they found it." That night, when I parked outside my building, I noticed my reflection in the glass door. My car lights were still on, but the engine was off. I reached for the switch, then realized the reflection wasn't moving when I did. And for a moment, just one breath, I thought I saw someone sitting in my driver's seat, smiling back. Rehearsal always ran late on Thursdays. We'd finish around 9:30, then stand around another half hour talking, laughing, gossiping. That night was different. The weather had been dry all week, but the air outside felt heavy, like a storm was hiding behind the horizon. The parking lot behind St. Matthew's looked oddly clean, rows of painted lines gleaming under the floodlights. empty spaces stretching out like a chessboard waiting for someone to move. Everyone else had left except me and Pastor Greg. He was locking the side doors, humming some old hymn under his breath. "You good to close up?" he asked. I nodded, waved, and walked toward my car parked near the far corner under the oak tree. I'd parked there because the front spots were full earlier, and now it looked like I'd made a mistake. The further I got from the building, the quieter it got, until the sound of my own shoes on gravel was the only thing alive. That's when I heard it, a car door closing softly somewhere behind me. I turned, expecting to see Pastor Greg heading to his old truck, but his taillights were already vanishing down the hill. The rest of the lot was empty. I laughed it off, unlocked my car, tossed my bag in the passenger seat. Then I saw it. Across the lot, parked at the very edge where the light didn't quite reach, was a dark SUV I hadn't noticed before. No plates I could see. Its interior lights were off, windows tinted black. I didn't hear it pull in. It hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. The engine wasn't running, but something in the air buzzed faintly, like a current between us. I got in my car, shut the door, locked it. My hand hesitated on the ignition. The lot suddenly felt wrong, too open, too quiet. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot to pray." I froze. The message came through with no contact name, no preview image, no signal bars. Just that one sentence. When I looked back toward the SUV, its brake lights flickered once, then off, like an answer. I tried to tell myself it was someone from choir playing a joke. Maybe Marcus or Haley. They had my number. They'd teased me before for staying late. I typed back, "Who is this?" But the message didn't send. No service. I started the car, headlights washing over the white church walls. The steeple's cross threw a shadow across the lot, cutting clean through my windshield. My headlights caught movement near the back of the SUV, a flicker, like someone shifting inside. I couldn't make out much through the tinted windows, but the outline looked human. Sitting in the driver's seat, still as stone. I wanted to drive off, but something about that text hooked me. "You forgot to pray." It wasn't random. I'd been thinking the same thing when I left, how I'd rushed out without saying my usual prayer for safe travel. My mom drilled that into me growing up. Never drive home without giving thanks. Maybe that's why I hesitated. Maybe that's why I rolled down the window a crack and whispered one, quick and shaky, "Lord, keep me safe tonight." The second I finished, my car radio came to life. No music, no static, just a voice, soft and close, whispering through the speakers. "He didn't hear you." I slammed the radio off, heart hammering. The SUV's headlights came on, flooding my car in white light. I couldn't see anything beyond the glare, just the faint outline of a person stepping out. Tall, barefoot, moving slow, deliberate, like they knew I wouldn't run. I threw the car into reverse, tires screeched. The figure didn't move. Then the church lights flickered and went out. The parking lot vanished into darkness. My headlights were the only thing keeping shape in the world. I turned them toward the exit road, but something caught in the beams, a small wooden cross lying on the ground. It hadn't been there before. I stopped. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe it fell from one of the graves behind the church. Maybe someone dropped it. But then I saw the carving on it. Not the usual smooth lines of a store-bought piece. This one looked handmade. Rough edges, splinters, a faint stain that looked too dark to be varnish. Behind me, the SUV's engine roared to life. The sound hit like thunder, low, guttural, wrong. I turned back just as its headlights swung around, pointing straight at me again. The cross on the ground cast a perfect shadow over my lap. I put my foot on the gas, but the pedal didn't move. It felt locked, like the car was resisting. My phone lit up again. Same number. "Get out and kneel." I didn't. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed no. Instead, I reached for my keys, ready to pull them out, then froze. The passenger seat was no longer empty. Someone was sitting there. I couldn't see their face, just the faint shimmer of pale skin in the darkness, hands clasped like in prayer, head bowed. A faint hum vibrated from their throat. A hymn. One I knew. Amazing Grace. I screamed and flung open the door, stumbling into the cold night. The figure didn't move, didn't even look at me, just kept humming. Then I realized the sound wasn't coming from inside the car anymore. It was coming from everywhere. The hymn echoed through the lot, soft and distant, like a congregation buried under the pavement. I backed away, breathing hard, my eyes darting between the SUV and my own car. The SUV's lights were off again, no driver visible. The church loomed behind me, black windows like hollow eyes. I turned toward the side door. It should have been locked, but when I pulled the handle, it opened. Inside, only emergency lights glowed red along the hallway. I stepped in, calling out, "Hello? Pastor Greg?" My voice sounded tiny in that space. Something dripped nearby, steady, rhythmic. I followed the sound to the sanctuary. The main cross above the altar gleamed faintly, but below it, near the baptismal font, the carpet was wet, a puddle spreading slowly. Water. Except the air didn't smell like water. It smelled like metal. I backed away, heart pounding, and that's when I heard the door close behind me. Click. Then, the same whisper as before, close enough to feel against my neck. "Kneel." I turned around. The aisle was empty. The red light flickered, catching on the wooden pews like veins. I dropped my phone trying to film something, anything, but the screen stayed black. The whisper came again, this time lower, strained. "You forgot to pray." Every light in the sanctuary went out at once, total darkness. And in the dark, I heard dozens of voices whispering the Lord's Prayer, each one out of sync, overlapping, desperate. When I stumbled backward and burst out the door again, the lot was completely empty. No SUV, no cross, no sound, just the echo of Amen in my ears. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I left the car running in the driveway, lights still on, afraid to turn anything off. I just sat there staring at my phone, scrolling through my messages, nothing from that unknown number, not even the one that had come before. The next morning, I went back to the church. Couldn't help myself. Needed proof I wasn't losing it. The lot looked normal, quiet. The oak tree still dropped leaves over the far corner where I'd parked. But something new stood near the side of the building. A small wooden cross, stuck in the ground. The same rough carving, the same dark stain. Pastor Greg was there too, looking tired. "Someone left that here last night," he said. "No idea who." When I looked closer, I saw letters carved into the wood, my initials. I asked him if he'd gotten any strange messages. He looked confused. "Messages?" "Number. But the security cameras caught something." He led me inside, into the small office. The footage showed the empty lot, my car, the SUV in the corner. At 9:54 p.m., my headlights flashed, and the SUV vanished. Not drove off. Vanished. Frame by frame, it just blinked out of existence. But right before it disappeared, the driver's door opened. Someone stepped out. It was me. Same clothes, same bag, same exact movements I remembered making moments later. And as the footage ended, the timestamp on the screen read, Friday, 9:54 p.m. The only problem was, I was watching it Thursday morning. It was supposed to be a quick stop. I'd been driving for hours, half the state behind me, half still ahead. The highway signs had blurred into white noise, and the rain kept brushing the windshield just enough to hypnotize. I saw the diner's neon lights through the mist like a promise. Eddie's open 24 hours. I pulled into the lot around 1:17 a.m. Only 3 other cars were parked, 2 trucks and a rusted sedan. The lot's surface was slick, reflecting the red neon letters so that it looked like the ground itself was bleeding light. Inside, the diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease. A waitress with a name tag that said Marlene asked if I wanted the night special, which I quickly learned meant whatever was left in the fryer. I nodded, ordered coffee, and sat near the window. That's when I noticed the man in the corner booth. He wasn't eating, just staring out into the parking lot, hands clasped around an empty mug. Every few minutes, he'd glance at the window, then at the reflection behind it, as if something might move out there if he looked long enough. When my food came, it was lukewarm but edible. I looked out too. The lot was empty except for those 3 cars and mine. Rain had picked up again, making the lights shimmer in puddles. Then I saw it. One of the truck's headlights blinked once, then again. Not in rhythm, not accidental, like a signal. Marlene noticed me looking. "You see it too?" she asked quietly, voice lower now. "See what?" She didn't answer, just set the check down and said, "Don't stay too long." When I looked back at the truck, both its headlights were off, and in their place, reflected faintly in the wet glass, was a figure standing between the cars. The figure was barely visible in the reflection, just a dark outline, no features, no color. It stood between my car and the sedan, facing the diner, but when I turned to look directly, the space was empty. Just rippling puddles and the endless hum of fluorescent bulbs. I told myself it was exhaustion, my eyes playing tricks. I'd been driving since morning. But Marlene's words kept looping. "You see it too?" I took my coffee to go. The door's little bell jingled as I stepped outside. The air was colder than before, sharp and wet. My shoes splashed against the asphalt. The diner's neon lights hummed louder out here, red and blue bleeding together across the puddles. My car sat near the middle of the lot, alone now. The trucks and sedan were gone. Except, no, their tire marks were still wet. They hadn't driven off. I got that prickling feeling on the back of my neck, the one that says, "You're being watched." I turned in a slow circle. Nothing. Just the empty lot, the silent diner behind me, and the sound of a sign creaking in the wind. Then my phone buzzed. No number, just a message. "You left something inside." My stomach dropped. I checked my pockets. Wallet, phone, keys, all there. I turned toward the diner window. Marlene was gone from behind the counter. The lights inside flickered once, then steadied. That's when I saw the man from the corner booth standing in my reflection. Not behind me, in the glass. His eyes were fixed on me, face pale and grainy like old film stock. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the diner lights went out completely. The darkness hit like a wave, total, absolute, swallowing even the sound. For a moment I stood frozen, waiting for my eyes to adjust, but the world stayed black. Only the faint glow from my phone screen painted shapes across the lot. I pointed the light toward my car. The reflection of the diner's neon was gone. But my car's door was open. I was sure I'd locked it. My first instinct was to run, but my body didn't listen. I crept forward, breath sharp and shallow. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and quiet. I could hear each step, the soft suction of my shoes lifting from the pavement. When I reached the car, I leaned just enough to look inside. The driver's seat was wet. Not damp, soaked, like someone had been sitting there dripping. The keys were still in the ignition. I turned the phone's light toward the rearview mirror. There was something written across it in fog. A single word. Stay. That's when the diner's radio came on behind me. The building was dark, but from inside, static hissed through the speakers, broken, sputtering. Then, faintly, beneath the static, came a voice. "You shouldn't have left." It was Marlene's voice. I stepped back from the car. The radio grew louder, turning from static into a kind of humming, like a chant. Then the diner lights flickered on again, and every seat inside was filled. Dozens of people, motionless, heads tilted toward the windows, and every single one of them was staring at me. I ran, didn't think, just ran for the exit. Gravel sprayed under my tires as I threw the car into gear. The headlights sliced through the fog, cutting a narrow tunnel ahead. But the road wasn't there. Where the highway should have been was only more parking lot. Stretching endlessly, painted lines repeating like a glitch in reality. I drove faster, 30, 40, 50, but no matter how far I went, the diner's neon sign stayed in the rearview mirror. Eddie's open 24 hours. I slammed the brakes. The car skidded, tires screaming. When I stopped, the world went silent again. I stepped out. The air felt thick, unreal. Even the rain had frozen mid-drop, hovering in the light. The diner still glowed faintly behind me. I tried calling 911. The line connected, but what came through wasn't a dispatcher. It was static, then Marlene's voice again. "You didn't pay." I turned. She was standing beside the car now, apron still on, hands clasped. Her face looked the same, but her eyes were empty, like the reflection hadn't finished filling them in. I backed away, fumbling for my keys. "You can't leave," she said softly. "Not until you finish your meal." When I looked down, my hands were holding something, a plate, cold and damp, piled with food I hadn't ordered. It smelled like rain and iron. Then the headlights behind her came on, 1, 2, 3 sets. The missing cars, all facing me, engines revving. I dropped the plate. The sound it made didn't echo. It just disappeared into the air like it had never happened. I don't remember the crash, just the sound of glass breaking and my own scream echoing inside the car. When I woke up, dawn was breaking. The diner lot was empty again, calm and gray. My car's front end was smashed, but I was alive. My phone sat on the dashboard, cracked but working. 2:07 a.m. The clock hadn't moved. I stepped out slowly. The neon sign was off now, but faint letters still glowed under the morning haze. EDDIEs. The door to the diner hung open. Inside, everything looked normal. Chairs stacked, counter clean, coffee still steaming faintly in a single cup. A note sat beside it. It was my check. At the bottom, written in neat handwriting, "Thanks for staying." I ran back outside, keys shaking in my hand. I turned to look one last time and froze. Across the lot, at the very edge of the asphalt, stood a figure. Not Marlene, not the man from the booth. Me. Clothes drenched, expression hollow. Watching. He lifted a hand, my hand, and pointed toward my car. I turned to look. The door was open again. The seat was still wet, and the radio faintly was playing that same voice. "Eddie's open 24 hours. Please come again."